How many phone numbers do you need for privacy? Do you need to change phone numbers? Do you need to use burner phones? Yes, phone numbers can be a serious privacy threat, so the proper approach is important. Why are phone numbers a threat? The answers are not obvious. Back in the day of landlines, the main privacy threat was that someone could look you up in the white pages of a phone directory, and so carriers offered a privacy listing so you don't appear in that directory. So you probably think that the privacy threat is that random people could look you up in some global cell phone directory. This is actually not the threat. Now, the threat is not the same for all people. First, you have to understand what you're protecting yourself against, and then you can judge for yourself what you have to do about your phone numbers. So stay right there. I'm on the platform Odyssey.com. I'm now one of the top creators on there. Just for insurance, in case I get deplatformed, please follow me there using the link in the description. My company offers a VPN service, Bytes VPN, de-Google phones, VPN routers, and now we offer a Braxmail email service. These products are made to protect you from big tech and their tricks to profile us. If you're interested in them, they are on my app, BraxMe. The link is in the description. When it comes to phone numbers, there are actually two main threats. One threat comes from big tech and how this information can be used to identify you. The other threat applies to people who fear being tracked or wiretapped by a government. I'm not talking about criminals here, but dissidents, journalists, perhaps in a foreign country. This group of people were also targeted by the NSO group with the Pegasus hacking attack, and your phone number has to be known to be attacked. I'll talk about the second threat in the second part of the video, and I think you'll find it interesting even if you don't have this threat. There are other threats that are more physical in nature, like doxing and stalking, but I'm not going to address that in this video. First, let's examine the more obvious big tech threat. As I talk about incessantly in my videos, the real privacy problem relates to identity. Big tech classifies you by your thoughts and ideas on the internet. And as much as you think this is for advertising purposes, the more insidious use has been their ability to manipulate people's opinions based on their knowledge of what you're thinking. And this is the scariest of all capabilities. Several companies do this. The three biggest databases of behavior are with Google, Facebook, and Palantir. But their ability to manipulate each person is dependent on their knowledge of your identity. If they can assign a unique identifier that matches you, then their methods will be effective. If they cannot be certain of your identity, then they can't really find much value in the data collected about you. There are many sources of identity. Some I've discussed in other videos, like the IMEI of the phone you're using. But definitely the phone number is one of the most valuable identifiers and the easiest for big tech platforms to obtain. In recent years, there's been a heavy push to force two-factor authentication, or 2FA. It's not enough to have a password to a platform nor an email. Now they require 2FA. And 2FA has been heavily focused on the phone number. 2FA is typically implemented by text verification. Facebook was one of the first to really push this. If you don't give Facebook a texting phone number, they disable your account. At first you think this is for your safety, but Facebook is just zucking social media. This is not your bank, and yet they wanted phone number verification. The reason, of course, is that they wanted this for identity purposes. In fact, having a phone number was an effective way for Facebook to remove fake accounts and fake identities. Most people will not go too far in maintaining many phone numbers, and Facebook knows this. So I'm certain that many accounts were closed because some user did not want to reveal that several accounts were connected and were the same person. And this is the value of the phone number. But this has progressed to a new level and caught many early users of these platforms unawares. Most of you fear that phone numbers can be looked at via central directories that are perhaps publicly published and available to big tech platforms. This is actually not the case. They don't need access to a phone directory. They already have their own. Big tech has a very easy source of phone numbers with matching real names and sometimes with names, addresses, and birth dates. That, my friends, is the insidious contact list. In the early days of social media, companies like LinkedIn, Facebook, Yahoo, and many messaging apps were hell-bent on expanding their user base by trying to capture your contact list. And everyone was so willing to share their contact list because all wanted to meet up on some popular platform. And there are the more subtle collectors of contact lists. These were the email providers, particularly Google with Gmail. It seemed plausible that email works better when you build and upload a contact list. But you didn't know that it could be used beyond that. Gmail also automatically expands your contact list every time you email a new party. So this extends further and further to identify all your connections. Unfortunately, most contact lists started from a phone contact list, and thus phone numbers with real names are often on it. So unbeknownst to you, you have provided many of the big tech platforms with a phone directory and often with other information on it, including birthdays, email addresses, and even a home address. The sad part is that this has expanded so far that this information is gathered whether or not you choose to participate. The source of the data are now the sheep who don't understand the significance of contact lists. In other words, the threat now comes from your friends and acquaintances. You cannot control when they upload a contact list. So the effect now is that your phone number is crowd verified with a name. And your connections with people are verified as well. So in essence, your identity is locked in once they have the phone number, and that is in your friend's contact list. Now understand the process here. You go to a platform like a Facebook or Google and you give your phone number for 2FA. If that phone number is matched to your identity through these contact lists, then there is no hiding. Your identity is clear and you are now subject to tracking forever. Plus, it connects you to the source of the contact list, and all the intersections of contact lists show who's connected to whom. This is what I call a relationship map. So if you read between the lines of what I'm saying, it should be apparent that the phone number you use for 2FA is the culprit here. It's not necessarily about changing your current phone number. You can keep your current phone number. The only time big tech platforms find that well-known phone number is if you give it to them. It's that simple. Don't give your well-known phone number, the ones your contacts know, to big tech for 2FA. You must give them some other number. Even if your well-known phone number is in the big tech databases via these contact lists, if you provide a number that is not known to your contacts, then you are all set. Your identity is secure. So, it's that simple. Just get a separate phone number like a landline and then we're all set. Unfortunately, there are a few little gotchas we have to think about. Landlines, even secret ones, aren't going to work because 2FA verification relies on texting. So the real issue is having some way to get text verifications, and this is more important than having calling capability. I have not found inexpensive ways to do texting-only services. There are many providers of voice over IP services that can provide you with texting. Most of these cost $20 a month or more. That's a lot just for texting. In the USA, Google Voice is free. The problem is that Google Voice cannot be used for text verification with Google. And secondly, when you forward a call from Google Voice, you're basically revealing your phone number again. So the least expensive alternative I found is to use a separate SIM card with an old phone, and I use this SIM card solely for 2FA. A cell plan that's based on use would not be expensive since all you'd be using it for would be incoming text. I'm using a plan that's approximately $12 a month. This is from Ting.com, and this enables me to use it for all my social media. One number is enough for all of this. And to make it even more safe and prevent establishing a pattern, I regularly change the phone number. I just call the carrier and ask for a new SIM card and change the number. In fact, I stock up on SIM cards and I just replace it regularly. You can, of course, use the same number to give to strangers, but I think it's better to keep this for 2FA only so it doesn't show up in the contact list. For strangers, I prefer to use Google Voice and then have that forward to this 2FA number. That way no one can directly store it in a contact list. Google would already know the 2FA number in this case, so forwarding to it from Google Voice wouldn't have any additional risk. So to use a new SIM card, you have to use another phone. This is a tip to not dump or sell your old phones. It could still be useful. Outside of the US, dual SIM phones are more common, so you don't have to carry an extra phone. But no one sells dual SIM phones for the US market, so you'd have to get an international phone that has it. Obviously, a dual SIM phone is more convenient since you don't have to carry a separate phone. But the times when you do text verification are actually predictable and not that common. I don't need to carry my 2FA phone around. Here's another question. Let's say you have 4 members in a family. Do you all have to get a separate phone number for 2FA? No. You could all share one 2FA phone number. Since you can easily contact each other to get a verification code, this should work well. So the only issue is that you should use a phone number that doesn't appear in someone's contact list. If you use a commercial voice over IP provider, they can give you an app to receive text, and that can also be shared by a group of people. All you're interested in are incoming texts. Maybe someday there will be providers of incoming text services that'll be much cheaper because of the limited use we need it for. If you know a company that does this, let me know and we can promote them. Is it a problem to give out your main phone number for 2FA to non-big tech platforms like banks? No. The 2FA threat is specifically applicable to those that generate a profile of what we believe, so this is limited to big tech platforms. However, be aware that the company Palantir gets information from government sources as well as credit reporting agencies. I don't know if there's a way around this, but if you protect your presence in social media, then Palantir should not be able to match the real identity, which they always have, with social media activity, which are collected by the big tech platforms. It is the social media activity that reveals your thoughts and beliefs. If this concerns you, you may want to have a third phone number for other entities that ask for a phone number but are not your friends. In my case, I use Google Voice for this group, and this is also the source of spam calls. Next question. Is it valuable for privacy to change your phone number one time? To start from scratch, let's say. I don't think this will be of much value because the moment you hand a new phone number to your contacts, then it will start getting uploaded to social media contact lists, and the new number will be as compromised as the old one. So a separation of real life to internet life is what's necessary. Now, some people have a more serious threat, like those dealing with state-level threats, like whistleblowers, journalists, or dissidents. While we can still believe that we can have alternate opinions in the USA and feel free, this is not the case in other countries. And the primary way governments surveil users is via their phones. Phones can be wiretapped. In fact, the wiretapping is automated now and is enabled automatically in the USA by law. Phones can be hacked with the SIMjacker attack and the Pegasus attack. Both of these attacks do require that your phone number be known. All a law enforcement agency has to do is to go online and connect to the carrier and do wiretapping. We're beyond the old days where somebody has to actually use wires to tap. Even in the USA, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to get a phone service without providing your identity to your carrier, including social security numbers, which is supposedly used to check your credit. At the very least, the purchase of a SIM card requires some identification or a credit card. This is because of KYC, Know Your Customer laws, and that came about because of 9/11. For this reason, it is likely a crapshoot to think that you can always get anonymity with burner phones or purchasing pay-as-you-go SIM cards. You can go get a friend to buy the burner phones or SIM cards for you, but there's still a way to trace the transaction. Or if you pay in cash, there's always a camera. But either way, it is not immediately known who is using a phone number when you first use it. Two people conversing on two previously unknown phone numbers are usually safe. So a case of burner phone to burner phone is usually a safe move. However, once one of those phone numbers are discovered, then both are compromised. Governments use stingray devices to find out the phones nearby. So if someone is actively surveilling you and you're within range of a stingray device, then obviously the phone number will be discovered and associated to you, and a government could then listen into the conversation. The most common ways a burner phone is compromised is based on who you call. So someone wanting to keep the identity of a burner phone secure will lose that secrecy once you call someone you know that's on a known phone number. In the movies, you'll see how calling your spouse on a burner phone will reveal your identity. Then after that, it's a simple matter to get the phone carrier to reveal your location. If you're using 5G, then that location is exact. If you're using 4G, the location is not that exact. There's another method used by the No Such Agency, and this is voice printing. Your voice can be recognized over the phone networks, and your phone number will then be found. If you're an important enough person, this is definitely a major threat. But this is mostly a USA capability, as far as I know. So the only safe way to use a burner phone is to use it to call another burner phone. And for absolute safety, it can only be used once. Edward Snowden and John McAfee knew that the only possibility for some safety was for them to never have a phone number. For secure communications, use secure messaging apps, particularly those that don't require a phone number. Against state players, phones are very dangerous and not really safe. If you think your phones are being hacked and attacked, just understand this final comment. The capability to hack a phone remotely is a state-level capability. It is not in the skill set of a standard hacker. The most common way of hacking phones would be via physical access, and that does not require that they have the phone number. So don't imagine threats coming from ex-spouses and such. Someone has to have a connection to a state-level player. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.